How are you doing? I'm Martin from Gardens for Life in Birdland Homestead. So I'm coming to you live here from the lovely Birdland studio. It's Bianca's music studio. She's also on the chat here at the moment. She's watching from the house. And I just was wondering if you can hear me okay. Can you let me know in the comments below? No matter what platform you're on, I should hopefully be able to see your comments coming in, at least off Facebook and YouTube. We're also streaming live to Birdland Homestead, the new YouTube channel as well. So we haven't connected Odyssey and Rumble just yet, but we'll get there, and hopefully we'll get Instagram working in due course as well. And how are you doing, Bianca? Can you hear me okay? How is the sound? I guess the sound is probably the most important thing. We're a little bit grainy here. I've got a light here. Let's see, how is that? Great, thank you. Thanks for letting me know. So, if you have any questions, that's great. If you have any questions at all about gardening or homesteading or anything else that you might have seen on our channels to see, for example, anything about plants either, or vegetables, or trees, let me know if you have any questions at all in the comments. And if you don't mind, just start off your comment with a question, all caps, just so I know that I've got some questions there to answer, so I can pick those out a bit easier. And this is actually the very first, a bit too loud, oh I see. How do I fix that? Hang on, I can just put the microphone a little bit further away. Hang on. The microphone, that's the lavalier microphone, is very sensitive. How is that now? Is that any better? I'm a little bit further away now from the microphone. Great, thanks. Geez, the comments are coming in really quick as well. So usually there's like a minute of a delay, but it seems that StreamYard has definitely improved an awful lot since the very beginning when it was introduced. We used to actually use StreamYard about 3 or 4 years ago, and there definitely was a bit of a delay in that. But also we now have fibre broadband, so we're lucky enough, and we're grateful to have broadband out here in the middle of the sticks. And if you have any questions, again, please let me know in the comments and I'll answer them for you. Now, I did get a lot of the more common questions that people would ask about gardening, such as, what do you do about the slugs? I can answer that one straight off the bat, and it's actually something that people ask me both in in-person workshops and courses, as well as on the internet, and as well as in comments on YouTube. Well, the slugs are probably our biggest, what would you call it, recycler of the cold temperate climate. Here in Ireland it's a very wet climate, of course, a maritime climate. We're right surrounded by ocean, and right beside the ocean, we're not too far from it. We simply ignore the slugs. So there is different techniques that we use to reduce slug damage, or slug pressure as I call it. And mainly it involves not leaving food for them around the place, and not creating habitat for them as well. So in our gardens we don't actually use any kind of raised beds with wooden sides, for example. We don't use, we don't bother with rocks anymore, because that's only places where animals like the slug or even rodents can hide. So that's not a great idea either. But mainly we actually try to keep the slug population down by just using a little bit of a sprinkle of wood chips on our paths in the gardens, and the rest of the garden beds are all just mulched with compost once a year, and we don't leave any dead plant materials around, like leaves or weeds or anything like that you pull up. So that's really the main thing, because the slugs from all around can smell any kind of decaying plants, because those plants, their defense systems are down, and therefore the slugs come and ready to recycle them back into the ecosystem, and therefore you're better off to either feed those to the chickens, just throw them in the chicken pen if you're fortunate enough to have chickens, and You can also throw them in the compost pile, but again, we don't use compost piles ourselves. We only use something called insect piles, and those are mostly woody materials, just for the insects to overwinter. And hopefully they will already be there then when the spring comes, and we have flowers all over the garden and even on the trees, like the willows, for example, are flowering now. They're feeding the insects already. So we're always using the insects and to our advantage, I suppose, just in that more biodiversity is better. So let me see. Mushroom compost, we have a question. Do you need to add anything to grow fruits in mushroom compost? Well, what I would do is I would use mushroom compost to, first of all, I would smother the existing vegetation. So like the grasses or weeds or whatever you want to call them, other plants that naturally occur in your area. I would smother those either with plastic, then remove the plastic after a few months until everything is smothered, and add your compost layer. And you can also do this under fruit trees, but there is a couple of different ways you could fertilize a fruit tree or mulch a fruit tree. Mulching is always good, especially for fruit trees, because you want to keep the grasses off a young tree, especially because the grasses actually suck away all the sugars from the roots of the tree, and they have it grow a lot slower. So if you can manage to mulch all your trees, they will grow about twice as fast. And Toby Hemingway also once said, if you can reduce the wind in your garden, it'll actually help your trees to grow faster as well. So with mushroom compost, it's probably not really necessary to use mushroom compost to actually mulch your fruit trees, but I would suggest using wood chips instead. Or you could add a little layer of maybe an inch or two, or 2.5 to 5 centimeters of mushroom compost under your fruit trees, and that'll feed the tree for years to come. And then you add some wood chips, a good thick wood chip layer on top of that, just to make sure that the grasses and the weeds don't grow back just underneath the tree. There's also another technique for fruit trees that people use, especially in permaculture, and that is using the comfrey. So you can grow comfrey under the tree, and you can use something called chop and drop, and you would simply just get either a sickle or something like that, or something like a sickle to actually chop all your leaves off your comfrey a couple of times a year during the growing season, and that will help to mulch the tree. So it'll actually keep it'll keep the grasses down, and also those leaves actually have a lot of minerals in them to feed the tree as well. Fruit trees, especially apple trees, I know have a very shallow root system, but the comfrey can go much deeper, and it can actually pull up minerals from deep down in the ground. So you can also, you would call it a mineral accumulator for that reason. So all right, good night, Jacob. I'm just saying good night to our son. He's just going to sleep there. See you tomorrow. Where do I get compost from? There's another question. And wood chips as well. So depending on where you are in the world, if you're in Ireland, you can be fortunate enough to mostly in the Midlands, but sometimes you can even get mushroom compost delivered by truck to the outskirts of the country, like the coastal regions. But transport is really the main cost in that. Mushroom farms are the best places to contact, or find somebody that can transport it for you. Generally speaking, if you're within a half an hour to an hour of the mushroom farm, you could get it delivered by tractor, which is handy for access because a tractor can actually get into a field. Even if it's a little wet in the field, it's not a problem. With a truck, it needs to be bone dry, and it needs to be in the middle of summer after like a good old drought, like say several weeks, to even be able to get access to the field or the garden or whatever you do. Make sure that your driver doesn't get stuck on your land. So you want to make sure that this driver can get in, but also get out again. So that's one thing about getting stuff delivered. Like try to get as big a loads as possible as you can, if you can, because it's about the same cost anyway. So they're about 200 to 300 euro depending on what size of load you're getting and depending on how far you are from the nearest mushroom farm. And most of that cost, as I said, 3/4 of it is actually the transport itself. And it's well worth it. You get probably $5,000 worth of veg out of a big load of compost over the next few years. So it's always worthwhile. As for wood chips, I would suggest contacting your local tree services companies and your arborists, for example, people that cut trees, or maybe even we actually got some during the winter there. The video you saw probably a couple of weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, we got some delivered just at the tail end of the hedge cutting season. So farm, like agricultural contractors sometimes do hedge cutting for farmers, and that can only be done during months when the birds are not nesting, so until the end of February. So if you're looking for wood chips during the summer, you're going to end up with leaves in it as well, but you won't get them from agricultural contractors. You'll have to talk to somebody like an arborist that would cut trees that are hanging over a house, for example, or that are too near a house, and those may need to be cut even during the growing season. So that's one way to get wood chips. If you're getting into winter, you won't get any leaves or needles from like an evergreen tree, but you will get a better quality of wood chips. And mainly it's because it's actually mostly wood, and it'll last longer on your paths. You can use, maybe I'm answering this in too much detail, but I haven't got many other questions. I'll get to yours now in a minute, Bianca. But one thing I want to add is we often get a common question: can you use pine trees or spruce trees or even lelandis for wood chips? And the answer is yes, you can, and they're fine. They're not going to add acidity to your soil, so don't be worried about that. Because once you leave it in a pile for about a month, those needles, aka the leaves, actually go brown, and then there's no acidity left in them anyway. So it's not too bad. We actually used Leylandii wood chips before from for our wood chip island, and that was 4 years ago, and those actually lasted longer than what you call it? What's the name for it? Deciduous tree, like hardwood wood chips. So let me see here. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, that's fine, Bianca. I got that question. We can see I can see all of the questions coming in, all the comments of Facebook and both YouTube channels. Unfortunately, Instagram appears to not want to stream our broadcast live, but Twitter does. And I know I should be calling it Twitter. I just keep calling it Twitter. It's probably easier than calling it X. Whatever about rebranding that. Not a great way to rebrand something, and you have to keep saying formerly known as Twitter. So, does anyone have any other questions? We are out of questions already. I can see here that we're using a camera. Actually, it's a DJI camera for streaming at the moment. Hopefully the quality is good, and I know the lighting is a little bit low, but I can't really do much about it at the moment. So one thing I might do actually, while I'm waiting for some questions to come in, let me see here. Again, folks, for those of you who have just come in, just leave any questions that you might have about homesteading or gardening or anything related, or even how to start a business, for example. Leave those questions in the comments on whatever platform you're watching this on, and I should see those here. They should come through to here. And this is mainly really practice, because I haven't actually done a questions and answers, even a live session. I get fierce nervous before these, even though I really shouldn't be nervous. I know there isn't a whole bunch of people, but still it's important to me to keep the show going, so to speak, for those of you watching. And I don't want to be boring you either. So the last time we actually did some live Q&As was a few years ago. If you want to watch those, you're welcome to take a look at our YouTube channel on Gardens for Life, and under the live tab on our videos, you can watch the old Q&A sessions. There is some about Nordic gardening and some about plants and different things like that, and tubers, vegetables as well. So let me see here. There's another question has just come in from Gillian. Crop rotation. What to maybe sow now and to follow later in the summer? Okay. In general, we don't practice crop rotation at all. Crop rotation is the practice of putting one crop into one garden bed and then moving that crop next year so that you don't get a pest buildup of the same crops. If you keep growing the same crops in the same raised bed, or that's the theory, you will get some pests building up, like things that like to eat that vegetable. I wouldn't necessarily call them pests. They're just, little critters. And I think what you mean by crop rotation, what you actually meant is, what's that called? When you continue one crop with another. Follow on, I don't know what it's called, there's a word for it. But in general, we do use the same garden beds where we harvest one crop. Let's say, for example, garlic or any of the onions, especially the perennial onions. Sometimes we harvest them all, and we simply take up all the garlic or all the alliums, all the bulbs, and then we might plant something else in that area. Just because we might need the space because we haven't got another space for it, and we might just want to get a winter crop in. So usually in July, after the main heat of the summer, hopefully we'll get some this summer now. Last summer wasn't great for heat now, only in June. And hopefully this summer we'll get some heat, and after the main heat of the summer you should really plant some, for example, things that like to go to seed during the hot summer months. Like I suppose carrots, you can do like carrots, for example, I would plant midsummer. And I would plant things like kale, anything that you want to keep for the winter, that you want to leave in the ground, and you want to harvest it very late in the season. Let's say from November to February or March even. We have a lot of perennials now, so we don't really grow very many annual vegetables anymore. We don't mind them, it's just that I haven't really had the time to grow very many vegetables. But we have mostly perennials now, and we have probably about maybe 1.5 acres or 2 acres of gardens now, and we're ever expanding, and hopefully we'll get to the annual vegetables soon now as well. But it's handy, the owl perennials are so handy because you don't have to replant them every year, because they keep the existing root systems from last season and then build on top of it. Like they're basically just adding on to what strength they've already gathered in the last season. So it's really handy that way, and you get way more productivity that way as well. Succession, yes, that's the word for it. Yeah, crop rotation is a bit complicated, and also there's another thing actually called, what's it called? Bianca, are you still here? Let me think now for a second. Companion planting, it's called, and we had its giant chart actually, and it looked quite complicated. To me it was quite off-putting actually, just making it more complicated than it has to be. I think you're better off, instead of using companion planting as a guide as to what to plant in your gardens, I would rather keep it simple and simply use something called, by Toby Hemingway actually came up with, I can't think of the name of it now. This is the joy of being live. You can sometimes forget things too. Polycultures, that's what it's called, and where you simply plant different plants together that actually benefit one another. So different plants can eat each other's root exudates. Root exudates of each plant is actually just basically excess nutrients that the plant doesn't need, and it's giving those to the soil life. And usually the reason why plants actually give fertility or even nutrients back to the soil life is to attract bacteria from the surrounding area, and those will consume those nutrients and leave behind more food for the plant. So it's kind of like saving. It's like a savings account the soil itself is actually a savings account for the plants. Well, thank you, David. Thanks for watching the videos. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm glad I did, and I could have done it sooner. I don't really regret having not done it sooner. I could have done it. I could have left my job 2 years ago, or even 1 year ago, and I just wasn't quite ready to go full time on the garden and on the homestead as well. But we'll get there now. That's right. It's called symbiosis. That's what basically it's a chemical process that plants that you plant into a polyculture actually use. So they actually, you can have different plants that work together in a symbiotic relationship when you plant them together. For example, the best example actually is a plant that, or it's not really a plant, it's actually a fungus. It's the winecap mushroom, or King Stropharia. That is a symbiotic mushroom, and it's also a very nice culinary mushroom as well. And you can plant that. It will actually connect to all your plants in the garden with its root system and expand those plants' root systems. And it will help the plants actually gather up nutrients and minerals and even water as well. And somehow plants and fungi can actually talk to one another. Oftentimes trees are also connected in the forest through fungi networks or mycelium networks. Mycelium are simply the root systems of the fungi or the mushrooms, and it's actually electrical. It uses electrical systems. And who was that, Bianca, that said, Paul Stamets once said that the fungi networks underground in a forest system are actually kind of like the internet, nature's internet. So in that, they're able to tell each other what they need and then help each other get it. So plants do work together, and even it's just the ecology, I guess. So let me see here. Let me see, what other questions do we have? Are you ever able to source free supplies, I assume you meant, for your garden? Wood chips, for example? Well, we live in the countryside here, so wood chips will not be thrown away. In the city, they have to pay to get rid of them, but in the city you can get them. But in the countryside, I guess, probably even in the US as well, you will be paying for them as well. So like here, they do charges for wood chips, but they're not that expensive. We got, for those of you who have seen the video from the other day, when was that? About 2 weeks ago, I put out a video, and we got wood chips delivered. Well, that load of wood chips was €250, so that's not too bad. That's cheap enough. And that was, it's a lot of stuff. Like you can cover all the parts in your garden if you have a half an acre of a garden. So it's great, and it's enough for the whole year. It's well worth it. And also they break down over time slowly and feed the soil life as well. So, and you can use wood chips to mulch your entire garden, or your no-dig gardens. Then it turns it into lasagna garden beds. And then at that point you're turning bacteria-based soil, which is better for growing greens, for example, like annual vegetables, into a more wood-based, into a fungus-based environment, which is more like mimicking a forest floor. So in that kind of garden, I found that things like brassicas don't really do too well, but you're better off to mulch your gardens, all the ones that with perennials in them, with woody plants, especially with fruit trees or things like berry bushes and stuff like that. So let me see here if you have any more questions. Please hit the like and subscribe button. If for those of you watching, please give us a thumbs up. It would really help to get this out to more people. I highly appreciate that. Chances are maybe more people will see it as we are here. Jeez, I can't believe we're on for 25 minutes already. That's quite profound how quickly time goes, and I'm just all I'm very nervous about trying to keep the conversation going when I'm on my own. It would be handy to actually invite people and get other people's opinions too, like to actually do like a kind of not an interview but like a chat kind of, which was actually an idea that was inspired that I found out about from other people that I follow, and they would come together and all stream to the same screen and just talk to one another, have a conversation about interesting things, and the audience can chime in via the comments as well. So let me see if there's any more questions. I don't know what CPM is, to be honest, David. I'm not too sure. Let me see. Microgreens, yeah, microgreens are great, but vertical gardens in the cities, I mean, it's technology is great, but nature is better, and the less technology, the better. But at the same time, I'm all for automating things and systematizing things a little bit to a certain extent, so that you can still default to nature's ways. So I prefer actually having really low maintenance gardens, so I don't have to worry about it too much. I can walk away for a few months and it'll be okay. I mean, of course, the old weeds will grow, especially the old nettles. I have to take care of those in the next couple of weeks before they really take off. So let me see. What other? If you have any more questions, please put question and in all caps in front of your question in the comments, just so I can spot it quicker, because there's quite a few comments here from various platforms. How much space is ideally required to feed a family of 4, for example? Now, Gillian, I made a video series about, when was that? 3.5 years ago, at just after the beginning of the old pandemic. I made a video series about how to actually set up a garden, and it was simply a small, about allotment size, standard UK allotment size plot. It's called the Pizza Garden. If you haven't seen the videos yet, I would invite you to watch those on our YouTube channel. They're on the Gardens for Life YouTube channel, and of course they're free to watch. We have a 3-part series. It's an hour in total. It shows you how to smother the existing vegetation using 3 different methods, and also how to apply the compost, the wood chips on the paths, and then to plant it up. And then I showed 2 months after planting, and it's just amazing how quickly everything took off. And about an area of 10 by 8 meters will provide for most of the vegetables for a family. I mean, we're a family of 5 here in our household, and that garden was pumping out vegetables all year long. And really, one thing I would suggest doing though is make sure that you plant things that you actually like and that people will eat. Now, there's no harm in going astray a little bit and being adventurous in a culinary sense, but just make sure that you plant things that people actually want to eat. Now, you'll find that, especially if there's children in the house, they may or may not eat things. They may have a different disposition to certain vegetables. For example, our son, he does not eat cooked kale in the kitchen. He doesn't like it. I wouldn't say he doesn't eat it, but he really likes it when he's actually out in the garden. He just picks kale raw off the plant. And I always tell him to pick the small leaves because they're more tender, and he just scoffs them away. The same as most of the vegetables from the garden as well. He likes to eat green onion from the garden, but not cooked onion in the kitchen. So, once you have the garden, and if you have kids, get the kids actually involved in planting the garden and harvesting, and just get them involved, and that'll automatically have them interested in eating it. You don't have to force them to try. So let me see. Any other questions? So plenty of questions coming in now. If I don't answer your question this time, I may have to answer your question the next session, but I'll try to answer them all. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, no. Okay, David. So per view, yes. So once you actually monetize your videos on YouTube, you need to have 1,000 followers and you need to have 4,000 watch hours. Then after that, you can be considered becoming or monetizing your channel. And usually they just let you do it after that. And you don't get a lot of money. I mean, 20,000 views is about maybe 80 to 100 euros. So what's that? Probably maybe €5, €4 per 1,000 views. But it depends on the views and it depends on the video as well. I find it's all over the place. It just I think the algorithm is just throwing some of the old videos at people. For some reason, some of the older videos are actually taken off, and yet the newer ones with the higher production quality and the better content in them actually don't do too well. But you know what? Well, I don't mind telling you because you can look it up anyway on a website called Social Blade. You can type in any YouTube channel you like there, and you can get an estimate of how much money they're making. I make about €100 per month, and I get about 20 to 25,000 views per month. So it's not a lot, but you never know where it might take me. And it could take off any time, so hopefully it does. And if you find people keep hitting the owl thumbs up, that'll help with the algorithm as well. So how are you doing, Colin? Let me see here. So Chris is asking, is it easy to make a garden or plant-based business from home? Was there any issues when starting? Well, there wasn't really any issues. I just decided to take it professional slowly but surely. Like basically it all evolved organically, and that's the best way to start a business, to do it on the side. Start maybe you can turn a hobby or a self-financing hobby into a more reliable income stream. And if you can do well, you can get enough of an income stream to replace your full-time income. So if you have a job, hopefully you can juggle the two just until you're ready to go, like I did. So it's really hard though to keep the job going and to build the business to a level where you have an income pretty much equal to or more than the job. So, but that is, in my opinion, definitely the most safe way to start or to have the business, build a business slowly over time on the side and see if it works. And if it does work, put more time into it. You got to put time in it. You have to be banking hours, and you have to be what's the word for it? Consistent with your customer relations, I would say. Putting out content, providing people with some kind of value. And if they do spend money with you, especially if they do, then you got to provide them with more value than they expect. And that builds loyalty. And I could talk about that all day long. I actually listened to I guess I could call him one of my mentors, Jack Spirko from the Survival Podcast. I listened to him quite a lot for about 8 or 9 years now. And he did talk a lot about business as well. I have to give him some credit here where credit is due. And I like talking about businesses. So if you want to know more about that, absolutely, fire the questions in there. And if, by the way, if any of you guys have any questions that weren't answered this time around, just throw those into an email and just email me to contact@gardensforlife.ie, and I'll get those answered the next time we have a questions and answers session. And we might do these more often if people are interested. I don't mind doing them. I have great fun. I mean, it's a little bit weird that I'm the only one talking. It's kind of hard to keep the conversation going all the time, but I've been told I'm good at that. So let me say here, I'll try to answer a couple more questions. I hope that answered the question for you, Chris. Sorry, any issues? Well, just really quick. Really the only issue you have, or I had personally, was to just build it up slowly. You can't overdo it either. You know, you have to build it up slowly over time, and that's the best way to build up any business, really. Rather than going all out, let's say, quit my full-time job right now and like say maybe have 3 months or 6 months worth saved of expenses, or maybe some people even make the jump directly without savings from a full-time job to a full-time business, and they don't even know if the business is going to work. So you're better off to start slow, and as the business takes off, you can consider letting go of the job, or maybe even reducing your hours or your days and going into full-time from full-time to part-time jobs. One analogy was, well, it's kind of like you flying an airplane, and your business is the airplane, and you're just trying to build up enough speed before you come off the runway, you know, before you run out of runway, and you want to try, before you take off, you want to make sure you have enough speed on you so that you can let go of the job safely. So let me just have a look here. Any other questions? Talk about the space and how long ago I started. Question from Valerie. Okay. Well, we started with lots of little gardens around our house. We bought the homestead. It was actually just a farmhouse that was no longer a farm. In the end, anyway, not for the last 20 years anyway. We bought it 7 years ago, and we started lots of little gardens wherever we could find a little space in among the buildings, the outbuildings, and the mature trees on the side as well. So we didn't take down any of the trees. Those are very valuable for just blocking the wind and actually protecting your house from the wind. And I have to say it one more time. Bill Mollison once said that you can save 60% of your heating cost before you even get to the outside wall of your house. So you can block the wind. It'll help a lot to conserve energy in the house. And that's something that's often overseen. Sorry, now I'm just looking back and forward here just to check the comments. Yeah, we started 7 years ago here on the homestead, and then about five years ago or so, I started the other garden that you probably have seen in videos, which is about just over an acre, and it has come a long way. I started with the shelter belt, and I started with the wood chip island, which was right in the middle. But the reason why I mulched the entire garden, the no-dig garden, with a thick layer of wood chips, 6 inches of wood chips actually, is because there was grasses all around me in the field, and those were going to go to seed, and I had no means of actually mowing those. So I had to actually mow them using a hedge clipper, a petrol hedge clipper, and because I didn't have any kind of like a finger bar mower, or, you know, like a proper, or even a tractor with a mower on the back of it, and none of the neighbours had one either. They usually contract somebody to do like big fields, and it wasn't going to be worthwhile. I wasn't going to ask someone to do like that small a space for me. Also, there was so I basically just built up all of the gardens bit by bit, one piece at a time. Any time of year, really, it doesn't really matter, because a garden is for life. Hence the name of our business. We just every year we started. Every time we got rid of a bit of the grasses, we have a new garden. So every time we planted a new garden, a bit less grass to take care of next year. So give me a second now. I'll drink some water. Gotta get me an aluminium bottle someday. No, but yeah, we can talk about that all day long. I actually have a video here as well, but look, it's good. We'll have 40 minutes here now. Hopefully people are still okay. So let me just have a look here. Bianca has a question. Do I need a greenhouse to start plants and start a no-dig garden? You don't necessarily need a greenhouse, but it would be good to have some sort of a small little tent, even just to start seeds in, because it's just to get those started, to get those to germinate. It is good to have a bit of heat. Now, you could do it on a windowsill in your house if you have enough windowsills. And you can do a lot, especially with soil blockers. You can fit a lot of plants, like 40 plants, into a little tray like this. And by all means, definitely keep those seeds indoors as long as you can, because one of the principles of reducing slug pressure is to actually start your plants indoors on a table especially. That's what we have in the greenhouses. We have lots of tables. Actually, those are made of pallets as well. So the slugs coming in, they'll have a harder time to get to little young plants. And we want those plants to be nice and strong before those are planted out into the garden. So, but you could sow directly, but you're likely to have a lot of slug pressure in the very beginning, especially if you have deep grass nearby, which you probably would do if you're starting the garden. I would suggest starting plants in a greenhouse. If you don't have a greenhouse, start them on the windowsill, or maybe buy a little grow tent that you can get in Aldi or Lidl or somewhere like that for, I don't know how much they are, probably 50 quid. Now, let me just see here. What other questions have we got? What tree would you recommend to grow for firewood? We have acidic soil, continental climate. It depends what kind of firewood you want to grow. I would suggest grow first, if you're starting off and you want to harvest something within 10 years or sooner than that, I would suggest growing willows or poplars. Hybrid poplars are the best, or hybrid willows are also known as biomass willows. You can grow those just from a cutting, stick them in the ground. If you mulch them, they grow much faster. So we've done that, and I've shown that recently in a video, how mulching young trees benefits, how it benefits them. So you can look that up. But you can cut those back every year and they'll bush out more, and you get lots of long lengths of stick wood. So they can be about an inch thick, maybe 3 centimeters or so, and at the base. And then you can cut those up and use them for kindling. We always like to say that kindling is the most expensive kind of firewood, so you should definitely grow that first before you even grow any other type of wood. And if you have a high performance wood stove, and if you can burn even stick wood at high temperature so that all the wood gases also get burnt too. And if you want to know more about high performance wood stoves, I heard about that from Ben Falk in Vermont. And he has a book called The Resilient Homestead, and you can probably look him up. Hopefully he has a video about that on his YouTube channel. I'd like to check that out myself, because our stove in the house is very old now. It's a Stanley Aron, and it does not burn the wood gases. It's an old technology one. So we'd like to replace that in due course. And a high performance wood stove, it creates twice the amount of heat out of the same amount of fuel. So you're saving literally half the fuel. So you need half as much fuel to heat the house. And by the way, for those of you who don't have a stove, I firmly believe, even with all the technology, I understand a lot of it, like the geothermal, and you have the solar panels and all that, and then never mind the heat pumps, whatever about that. But I still think that wood, growing your own trees for firewood, is actually the most sustainable thing you can do to heat your house and to cook your food. So let me just check here if there is any other questions. Just thank you, people. Thank you, folks, for all these questions. There's so many of them now. Please put question in capital letters at the beginning of your comment if you have a question. That way I can also follow up on them afterwards, and I will check if there's any I left out, and I will add those to the next questions and answers session. I'd like to have a little bit of a pool of questions before I start. I was worried about it today that I'm not going to have enough questions. I actually didn't have any questions to begin with, which I was a bit surprised about. Hello, Tom. How are you doing? New York. That's lovely. Isn't that... what's the name of... There's actually a YouTube channel nearby you. What's it called? I can't think of the name of it now. he has a tenth of an acre of a food forest out the back, and he's in New Jersey. I can't think. He changed the name of his YouTube channel, but if you type in Food Forest New Jersey or something like that into, you'll probably find him. He's got lots of videos about it. He's been going for years, and he has a tiny little dog, his YouTube dog. It's really interesting. Do you think a garden composed completely of perennials is viable, or do you always need annuals? Well, Colin, that is the age-old question. We don't have to do without the annuals, but at the same time, we don't want to have a garden. I personally wouldn't want to have a garden with only annuals in it. I think it's good to combine the two, and I think you don't really need the annuals because there is a lot of perennial alternatives, especially all the alliums. So that includes the garlic is perennial, a lot of the onions are bunching and they're perennial, and you have kales that are perennial, and then you have all the tuberous crops which are technically not perennial, but if you have the right conditions, you can just leave them where they are and they'll keep coming back year after year, like the potato, the Jerusalem artichoke, which we still have on our shop if you're interested, and the mashuas, for example. But some of the other crops, you need to dig those up because they're not going to do well over the winter. Either the soil life eats them as it wakes up in the spring, or it's going to freeze, and a lot of those kind of vegetables, the more tender ones, they don't like the frost too much. As for annual vegetables, really all you've got there is all of the root vegetables like the parsnip, the carrot, and the kohlrabi. All those kind of vegetables, they just build up energy in the root for the first year, and then in the second year, after a long cold spell, the plant just knows that it's time to go to seed in the next season. So they keep building fertility, and then as soon as it has, or it keep building up strength, and as soon as those plants experience a long cold spell, kind of like fruit trees, they start to flower, or those plants go to seed, and they also, for example, carrots can go to seed even in the middle of the summer, even if you only planted them in spring, for example. But those are really an exception. I would suggest growing the annuals among the perennials. What I do is I always have a look at the Pizza Garden series. There's even a compilation. If you type Pizza Garden compilation into our YouTube channel or on our website, you'll find it. And you can you'll see that we started with mostly annuals and a few perennials on the edges, like things that go to flower, herbs for the kitchen or whatever, like rosemary and thyme and oregano. Also we planted marigolds as well, and Bianca will remember the marigolds in the Pizza Garden. So those are mainly to attract beneficial insects and hopefully help protect our crops as well, our annual crops. But it's kind of my thing to just keep on planting perennials in between the annuals until there is no more space. And perennials do spread too, although a little bit slower than annuals. And those can become plants, and I harvest those and plant those elsewhere maybe. But most of our gardens are turning into perennial gardens as we speak. So they actually, there's basically very little space for annuals, which is why I have to add on to the garden again this year. I usually add on a little bit here and there every year, any time of year really. Now let me just have a look if there's any other questions. Let me just take a look here. Oh, well, thank you for ordering plants from us. We really appreciate your support, especially now that I've gone full time. If any of you are interested in cuttings, we have our winter closing sale now at the moment. The winter selection is dwindling away as things are starting to grow now, so it's best if you are looking for things like cuttings like willow, poplar, or berry bushes, or things like comfrey cuttings and that type of thing, or Jerusalem artichokes, especially the tuberous sunflower, take a look at our website. I'll just put a link here. Hang on a second. Oh, let me just take a quick look here at our website. I'm just going to get a link for you. I just made a video. I put out a video today showing actually what's left of the winter selection, and there's also a discount code as well. Now there you go, and on that page you'll see the discount code for 10% off all of our entire shop. So let me just have a quick look here to see if there's any more questions. If you start your willow cuttings in water, how long should you do that for? Now, Tom, the trouble with starting any kind of cuttings in water is that the roots will be very fragile, and plus you'll have to dig a hole instead of just pushing those cuttings into the ground. So that makes it an awful lot more work to plant them. If it's a lot of cuttings, if it's hundreds and hundreds of cuttings, that can be quite a substantial amount of work. But you can leave those in the bucket for a year if you're not ready to plant them. But you're better off to plant them as soon as you can, really. Just because, well, you know, it'll be easier. The less roots they grow in the water, the better. But there's no harm in keeping those willow cuttings in the water for a long time, even a couple of months. You can always take those up as long as you don't let them dry out. Just make sure that you don't let them dry out, otherwise they will actually perish. Oh yeah, yes Chris, definitely hazel trees are extremely useful. I don't know about medicinal hazel, like witch hazel and that kind of tree. Those would be worth looking up. But for the food crops, like it's for an oil crop and for a food crop as well, long-term storable, definitely any of the nut trees are handy. Hazelnuts in particular will do quite well here, although it's a little bit wet in our climate, but they do occur a lot wild as well. So I tried to plant a few cultivars of hazels well, a year and a half ago or so, or maybe it was, yeah, about a year ago, and they're doing okay, but it takes time for hazelnut trees to take off. And just remember that nut trees are all wind pollinated, so if you ever have an issue where there's no pollinators left, hopefully that never happens where you are, but well, the wind will always be there, I suppose, and you can rely on a crop that way. So I think we'll start finishing up here. It's 53 minutes now. We won't let it go beyond an hour anyway. Well, thank you for all of you that have been participating here, especially for watching as well. And let me just see if there's any other questions. Oh yes, Bianca has a question there. Is there any preparations related to compost before starting no-dig? So I'll just answer, that's the last question. If you have any other questions, put those in anyway in the chat, and start with the all capital letters question, please, because that way I can take those and throw those into the pool for the next session next week. So compost. If you're ordering mushroom compost, you got to make sure you have somewhere to leave it in a pile for at least 3 months, because it takes time to break down. But it will break down faster if you leave it in a big heap, and because it's more of a mass, I suppose, and then it heats up more. The bacteria will actually break down the compost itself, and you can then use it. The acidity will drop dramatically, as in towards the neutral, and it's just too acidic in the very beginning to use for your plants. Mushroom compost is typically made of straw, chicken manure, and a little bit of gypsum, probably to reduce the pH, I imagine. And mushroom compost is definitely best after 6 months to a year, maybe even longer if you have space and if you have the capital to buy extra mushroom compost. I would highly recommend you do that, because a pile of compost is a whole lot of fertility and a whole lot of food security in your backyard, and it'll never go bad. It'll just get better with time, same as cheese and wine. You best cover it though. I never cover the compost pile during the year, but at the end of the summer, or when the grasses, in late summer when the grasses go to seed, just make sure that the grass seeds don't go flying into your compost pile. Otherwise, you better cover it for a few months during that period of the year. All right. Thank you all for watching, and thanks for asking questions. Hopefully you can think of some more questions for next week's session. Thanks a million for being here and for watching. See you the next time. Bye bye.